On the outskirts of the city, we have a semi-abandoned stadium, built back in the 70s of the last millennium and calmly rotting in our time. The municipality keeps it clean as best it can, but it is unlikely to wait for reconstruction. A year ago I chose this stadium for jogging after work, until one incredibly terrible incident, which is what I want to talk about. Since I worked late, I appeared at the stadium around 9 or even 10 p.m., so it was very rare for anyone else to be there, and I almost always cut circles in splendid isolation. No athletes like me, no punks, no onlookers. Beauty. Comma. That August evening I walked through the rickety gate, when the sun had already disappeared behind the old poplars that surrounded the stadium, but it was still quite light. With a light jog, I started my 5-kilometer race, which was 10 laps on the treadmill. Running past the stands, I noticed that someone was sitting in the very top row. At dusk I saw that this was some kind of man in a gray jacket, perhaps a late worker who decided to have a drink on the way home. Factory grounds were adjacent to the stadium. Without paying attention to him at all, I continued the race. On the third lap I noted that the man went down a couple of rows lower, which, however, did not awaken any concern in me. But since I discovered this, on the fourth lap I specifically looked at the sitting. This time it was located even lower. Now I couldn't help but think about him, and on lap 5 I kept trying to keep him in sight. The silhouette on the podium sat motionless in its place. For a second he disappeared from sight, as he was hidden by a billboard that I was running past. And as soon as I jumped out of the blind zone, I was surprised to see that the silhouette had moved to the third row, even closer to the track. The strangest thing is that he did not have time for such a maneuver, unless he flew over 2 rows of seats in the stands. That's where I started to get nervous. Once again running past him, I tried to look at his face, but the twilight did not allow me to see anything other than a completely bald head. Some bad feeling crept down my spine and sank into my legs. My breathing began to lose weight. Through an effort of will, I ordered myself not to slow down. I am a person of far from frail build, and it is unlikely that I should have been afraid of some kind of goner, even if he has inappropriate behavior. On the 7th lap, a man in the stands expectedly loomed on the front row seats. Now he sat at the very path, from which he was separated only by a low fence and a step. Fucking joker, I thought, trying to cheer myself up, while at the same time thinking about interrupting the run and leaving the stadium. It's a shame that I didn't listen to the voice of reason. Finally, when I ran up to the person sitting, I was able to see him normally, and I saw something that shocked me to the core. The man had no eyes. The face is ordinary in everything else, but instead of eyes there is skin, no eyebrows, no eye sockets, nothing. At that moment, I screamed in fear and rushed forward with all my might. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed how this creature jumped in place and in one fell swoop crossed the fence. Like a giant frog, stomping and hissing loudly, it chased after me. I will honestly say to all those who doubt, at such a moment, the unreality of what is happening does not in the least interfere with fear and panic. Logically deciding that a terrible end was about to come to me, I rushed with an inhuman scream across the grass-covered football field straight towards the goal, but I didn't have enough strength. My lungs were burning with fire, I was wheezing, and spots were floating before my eyes. The stomp from behind was inexorably approaching. I heard growling breath right behind my shoulder, and then a stab in the back, and this monster knocked me onto the grass with some kind of sob and chomp. I shrank, preparing for the worst, but nothing happened. Having grouped, I flew away from the crash site like a spring, rolled over my head and jumped to my feet. There was no one around, just as there was no one in the stands, and in the stadium in general. At dusk the grass darkened, and the old poplars barely noticeably swayed with branches. Twilight spread across the ground, striking with its calmness. My hands were shaking, my legs were giving way, but I tried to leave the stadium as quickly as possible, afraid to even look around. I can't explain what's happening. I quit running, and in general lately I've been afraid of empty streets. I don't know what saved me. Maybe it was just some ridiculous joke from otherworldly forces, or an unknown experiment to identify fearless athletes. In 6 months of worries, I have not come to any conclusions or ideas, but I will not forget this face without eyes for the rest of my life. That's for sure.